Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. This is the Public Committee of the Whole regarding bills numbers 240-966, 240-967, 240-968, 240-969, 240-970, 240-971, 240-972, and 240-973. I want to thank all of you for being here today and welcome you to City Council's Committee of the Whole. Mr. Christmas, would you please call the roll and take attendance?
Councilman Squilla. Councilor-Lady Gautier. Councilor-Lady Gautier. Councilman Jones. Councilman Young. Councilman Driscoll. Council-Lady Lozada. Council-Lady Bass. Councilman Phillips. Councilman O'Neill. Council-Lady Gilmore Richardson. Councilman Thomas. Councilman Harity. Council-Lady Ahmad. Council-Lady Landau. Council-Lady Brooks. Councilman O'Rourke. Council President Johnson.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Christmas. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. Mr. Christmas, will you please read the title of the bills?
Bill 240966 to grant the necessary authorizations for the city to help facilitate development, construction, and operation of a new arena for the Philadelphia 76ers professional basketball team and for other uses, including authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property and such other city officials as may be appropriate on behalf of the city to enter into the following agreements and take the following actions. 1, acquire fee simple title to all or portions of 1001 to 1025 Filbert Street, 1001 to 1019 Market Street, and 1025 Market Street together, the Market and Filbert Street properties. 2, acquire fee simple title to other parcels of land, aerial areas, and subsurface areas in the vicinity of the Market and Filbert Street properties, including, without limitation, those areas reverting to the city or other parties in connection with the striking of certain aerial portions of 10th Street between Market Street and Filbert Street, the additional properties, and certain other nearby parcels and areas. 3, enter into ground lease agreement with the Philadelphia Authority for Industrial Development under which the city would lease to pay all or a portion of the Market and Filbert Street properties, any additional properties, if any, and other parcels and subsurface areas the city now owns in the vicinity of those properties, all of which collectively would constitute the arena site. 4, join in or consent to a sublease and development agreement, the sublease between paid and either CBL Arena LLC, ArenaCo, an entity affiliated with the Philadelphia 76ers LP, or another entity affiliated with the 76ers under which ArenaCo or other 76ers related entity would sublease the arena site and cause an arena to be constructed on it, including a multi-purpose sports and entertainment facility and ancillary, accessory, and related amenities, improvements, and infrastructure, the arena, and agree to other related conditions. 5, upon the expiration or termination of the sublease or other circumstances set forth in the sublease, convey fee simple title to the arena site to pay for disposition to ArenaCo. 6, grant, accept, amend, relocate, and extinguish easements, agreements, conditions, covenants, restrictions encumbering, benefiting the arena site and any city-owned property adjacent to the arena site for the benefit of the arena site to facilitate construction and operation of the arena. 7, enter into a direct operating covenants agreement among the Sixers, paid, and the city under which the 76ers agree to play substantially all of their regular season and playoff home games in the arena. And 8, take all actions necessary and appropriate to accomplish the intent and purpose of this ordinance, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240967, authorizing and approving the execution and delivery of a service agreement between the City of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Authority for Industrial Development relating to the provision by the Philadelphia Authority for for industrial development of certain project-related services to promote, among other things, the growth and expansion of business, commerce, and tourism within the city of Philadelphia in connection with the development of a multi-purpose sports and entertainment facility, including an arena to accommodate National Basketball Association games and family entertainment, community, retail, and other uses. Authorizing and approving the obligation of the city of Philadelphia to pay in full when due the service fee and other amounts payable under the service agreement, and covenanting to make necessary appropriations for such purposes, and authorizing city officials to take necessary or appropriate actions to accomplish the intent and purpose of the ordinance, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240968, authorizing the revision of lines and grades on a portion of City Plan number 307 by striking from the city plan and vacating Filbert Street from 10th Street to 11th Street under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240969, authorizing the revision of lines and grades on a portion of City Plan number 307 by striking from the city plan and vacating certain aerial portions of 10th Street between Market Street and Filbert Street under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240970, authorizing CBL Arena LLC and its assessors and interests to construct, own, and maintain various right-of-way encroachments in the vicinity of 1001 to 19 Market Street, 1025 Market Street, and 1001 to 25 Filbert Street, Philadelphia, PA 19107, under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240971, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by amending certain definitions relating to signs, creating an arena area within the Center City Overlay District, and making related changes, including a master plan requirement and changes to accessory sign controls, all in connection with zoning rules for a proposed arena in Center City, and approving a master plan for the arena area, all under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240972, amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising certain provisions of Section 14906 entitled Market Street East Sign Regulations, all under certain terms and conditions. And finally, Bill 240973, approving the amendment of a neighborhood improvement district in the area generally bounded by and including 11th Street to the west, Filbert Street to the north, 8th Street to the east, and Market Street to the south, with the exception of certain condominium units at 801 Market Street Condominium, not included in the district, known as the Gallery Neighborhood Improvement District, to remove certain portions of such property generally bounded by Filbert Street on the north, 10th Street on the east, 11th Street on the west, and Market Street on the south from such district in accordance with the provisions of the Community Economic Improvement Act, all and under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize Councilmember Cindy Bass for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. On October 31st, City Council adopted Resolution Number 241000, which authorized and directed the Committee on Rules to take all actions required by the Community and Economic Improvement Act with regard to Bill Number 240973, which will remove the site of the proposed arena from the Gallery Neighborhood Improvement District. Given that all the other arena legislation is being heard in the Committee of the Whole, I move that this committee, rather than the Committee on Rules, hear and act on Bill Number 240973.
Thank you for the second. It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill Number 240973 be referred to the Committee of the Whole. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries, and Bill Number 240973 will be referred to Committee of the Whole. Thank you. Before calling the first witness, I want to offer a few brief remarks, but I also want to ask for everyone in here to please put your cell phone on silent. Also, any sidebar conversations, we will ask for you to take it outside of the chamber. And also, as it relates to the process for today, in terms of rules of engagement, we just ask that while everyone while the administration is doing their testimony about the proposed legislation that they're hearing today, please refrain from any types of oohs and ahs or additional outside commentary. Just want to be clear on that. There will be a time for public comment, which will take place next week. I think we have at least between 4 to 6 opportunities for individuals to come down and participate and voice their opinion pro or con as relates to the legislation that are proposed in front of us today. Are we clear, everyone? Are we clear, everyone? Any event that doesn't happen, to my left, we have members of the Philadelphia Police Department. Also to my left, we have members from Civil Service, as well as the Sheriff's Department. So we want to make sure this is an orderly and very lively and robust discussion, but we'll make sure that everyone who want to express their issues and concerns regarding this process, next week they will have the opportunity to participate during the public comment period. I want to thank all of you for joining us today as we begin our public hearings on the proposed arena development project. This hearing marks an important step in our legislative process where we'll consider all aspects of the proposal and its potential impact on our city. Our goal is to ensure a transparent, comprehensive, and balanced review of the proposal, which includes analyzing how this arena could contribute to our economy, create jobs in an inclusive and equitable manner, and support our local culture and sports. We'll also be examining the concerns raised regarding infrastructure and neighborhood impact to make sure all voices are heard and all questions are answered. As we proceed, I encourage everyone to engage in a respectful, constructive dialogue. This hearing will allow for all voices to be heard so that we can move forward with a comprehensive understanding of the project and its implications. It is also an opportunity to ask questions, seek clarity, and provide input so that we as a council can make an informed decision that reflects the best interests of our community and our city. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your schedule and being here. And with that being said, I'm going to ask for the Chief Clerk, my Chief of Staff, John Christmas, to please call the first witness list. Absolutely. The chair right now recognizes the author of the legislation, Councilman Mark Squilla, who hails from the great part of South Philadelphia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for everybody for attending today. It's an important part now that we start the legislative process. We received the draft legislation from the administration, passed on through the Council President's office, and introduced by myself. This gives us all now an opportunity. We've been meeting for a little over 2 years with a lot of the community stakeholders, listening to the concerns and challenges that this proposal will bring to the city of Philadelphia and the gallery site, Fashion District site. We want to make sure that this legislative process is robust, that we have opportunities for all the stakeholders and public to be able to testify and be able to have their opinions heard, and have every council member be able to hear those concerns and then look at the legislation to see if any possible changes should be made to the legislation or community benefits agreement as we move forward. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, mostly listening, asking questions, and really happy to see that all my colleagues are here also to be a part of this, to ask questions and to get as much information as possible before a final vote will be taken. So thank you so much, and looking forward to the process starting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Squilla. Will the clerk please call the first witness list?
The Mayor's Chief of Staff, Tiffany Thurman, and joining her will be City Solicitor Renee Garcia and Deputy Managing Director for Transportation and Infrastructure, Mike Carroll.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for being here today, and you can begin your testimony. Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning, Council President Johnson and all members of City Council. My name is Tiffany Thurman, Chief of Staff to Mayor Sherrell Parker. I am here today to testify in support of Bills 240966, 240967, 240968, 240969, 240970, 240971, 240972, and 240973. These bills reflect what the Parker administration negotiated with the Sixers for a new Center City Arena and the package of enabling legislation City Council is now considering. I want to thank Councilmember Squilla for introducing the package of bills that are now being heard today on behalf of Council President Johnson. We have submitted written testimony to City Council in advance, which includes details of the legislative package under consideration. Joining me today to provide oral testimony are City Solicitor Renee Garcia and Deputy Managing Director for Transportation and Infrastructure, Michael Carroll. Finance Director Rob DeBoe, Department of Planning and Development Director Jesse Lawrence, Chief Policy Officer Sophie Bryant, and PIDC Executive Vice President Sam Rhodes, along with other leaders and team members from across the Parker administration. We are here to answer any questions council members may have. We're grateful to be here, and we look forward to engaging in a robust dialogue. In regards to the overall framing, under this deal, we both keep our hometown 76ers playing in Philadelphia until at least 2026, and we jumpstart a broader city-led focus on the preservation of Chinatown and revitalization of Market East. The mayor established the following guiding principles to inform her consideration of the arena proposal. 1, careful stewardship of city resources and a focus on the city's fiscal stability. 2, unlocking the long overdue redevelopment of Market East, a historic and critical commercial corridor, maximizing the potential citywide impact of such a large-scale development project, and ensuring city residents and businesses from groups historically excluded from participation have access to related employment and contracting opportunities. We negotiated a union supporting agreement, SEIU, Unite Here, Building Trades, and Carpenters. We also focused on preserving and enhancing Chinatown as our guiding principle, including by responding to long-standing challenges arising over many decades. The agreement satisfies the following principles. First, the Sixers are financing the approximately $1.3 billion project with no city funds, an approach that is unprecedented from our local sports facilities and rare at a national level. The arena is projected to generate over $700 million in new tax revenues for the city and school district and nearly $350 million for the Commonwealth. Second, the arena will unlock long-needed redevelopment on Market East, attracting investment, generating jobs, and yielding new tax revenue. Third, the arena will create over 1,000 construction and operations jobs and is paired with a historic economic opportunity plan to ensure employment and contracting opportunities both during construction and operations benefits individuals and businesses reflective of the community at large. And these jobs will be covered by the 21st Century Minimum Wage Act, and many of the construction operational jobs will be covered by the existing prevailing wage ordinance. We support, also, I want to make sure that we get on the record, we support expanding prevailing wage to concession workers, and the administration is committed to making that happen, Council President Johnson. The $50 million community benefits agreement will support nearby communities and make city-wide investments in education and economic opportunity. Finally, and crucially, the CBA investments will galvanize resources aimed at ensuring Chinatown's ongoing vitality and strengthening this treasured cultural community. With regard to city finances, this agreement prioritizes careful stewardship of city resources and focus on the city's fiscal stability and growth. Unlike prior deals with our sports facilities, our sports venues, there are no city funds being invested in the arena and no related debt service. Based on an independent assessment by CSL, a nationally respected firm with expertise in arenas, arena construction and the forecasted 53 annual net new events during the 30-year base lease term should generate over $700 million in new tax revenues for both the city and the school district, and $349 million in new tax revenues for the Commonwealth,
Ms.
all
Tiffany?
in current dollars.
Ms. Thurman?
Yes.
1,000 pardons for interrupting you. I just want to announce that we do have translation services available for anyone in the audience who would need it. The lady is seated over here in the corner translating this hearing and testimony in Mandarin and Cantonese. And if you are in need of those services, you can get a headset and hear it in real time, what is being the testimony. 1,000 pardons, Ms. Thurman, please continue.
And I'll ensure I go slower so that it can be accurately and properly translated. These are relatively conservative estimates. CSL only considered the additional in arena revenue from net new events based on their actual experience with comparable facilities. CSL did not include indirect or induced impacts based on the economic multipliers. The Sixers will make an average pilot UNO payment of $6 million a year over 30 years. Putting that amount in context, it is significantly greater than the $1 million that is paid currently by the Fashion District and bus terminal sites. It exceeds the estimated $3.5 million tax bill that will be paid at Wells Fargo Center if taxed at the current assessment rate, and it equals the combined value of the $2 million a year pilot from the Eagles, the $1 million a year from the Phillies, and the $2 million a year from Comcast Spectacor. Let me turn now to Market East. Building on anchor destinations stretched from Old City and Independence Mall to Chinatown and City Hall, we have the opportunity to reimagine Market East to suit our modern-day needs. We can diversify uses along the corridor, adding retail, residential, and commercial, and boost pedestrian activity, attracting residents, local workers, and tourists alike. The development potential before us is significantly driven by the Sixers assembling key parcels on the 900 and 1,000 blocks of Market East. The Sixers' redevelopment plans for those blocks include 960 residential units, 85,250 square feet of retail space, and 300 parking spaces. Based on analysis by the city, its consultants, and the Sixers, we project $312.7 million in new city and school district tax revenue and $195.5 million in new Commonwealth tax revenue on a current dollar basis over construction and 20 years of operations just from redevelopment. The Sixers' overall investment, including the arena and this other development in combination with proactive and collaborative master planning, will be catalytic, spurring the redevelopment of other vacant or underutilized properties along Market East. I'll turn it now over to our city solicitor, Renee Garcia, to discuss how the agreement expands access to opportunity.
Good morning, Council President and esteemed members. I am Renee Garcia, your city solicitor. The Economic Opportunity Plan, the EOP, and the Community Benefits Agreement, the CBA, ensure that the positive impact of this project reaches all corners of the city, and especially those residents and businesses historically shut out from participation in large-scale development projects. In negotiating this EOP, we were squarely focused on the fact that ambitious participation goals are often set and never reached. To ensure that this EOP would be successful, we consulted with subject matter experts in the Department of Commerce's Office of Economic Opportunity, OEO, the Capital Program Office, the Law Department, the airport, and PIDC to identify gaps in those prior EOPs. We are confident that this EOP will deliver results with its focus on both the numeric participation goals it sets and the terms and conditions it includes to enable the city to track and enforce compliance across the construction period and during the arena's ongoing operations. The EOP's goals for a diverse workforce, by which we mean minority, women, and disabled employees, and diverse contractors, meet and exceed those for prior local arenas and stadiums. Notably, this EOP includes goals for local, by which we mean city residents, workforce participation for the operations phase, something that has not been included in all prior local arena and stadium EOPs. To set goals in the four main phases of development, construction workforce, construction contracting, operations workforce, and operations contracting, and concessions, we consulted with key experts, OEO, the building trades, the Sixers, and others to understand current availability. We negotiated an appropriate target range based on current availability plus expected increases in availability created by new workforce and contractor diversity initiatives that would be supported by the CBA's investments. This EOP especially differs from prior ones by, number one, requiring ongoing reporting and monitoring by the Oversight Committee to continue after construction and through the arena operations. Number two, obligating the Sixers to report to the Oversight Committee on quarterly basis during the decades-long operations period and file annual reports, which will be publicly available. Three, mandating that the Oversight Committee meeting minutes and annual reports from the Sixers be made public and posted on the city's website, empowering the tool of transparency. Four, setting forth a more detailed and expansive list of what counts as best and good faith efforts. And five, making any future arena alterations, expansions, renovations, or improvements costing over $1 million or taking more than 30 days, subject to the EOP requirements. With the EOP setting baseline goals for utilization and providing support to exceed these goals, we ensure our local workforce and small and diverse businesses are ready to respond to increased demand. Turning to the CBA, in current dollars, the $50 million is larger than those for any prior local arena or stadium. Importantly, the CBA payments are front-loaded, with 60% of the total being spent down in the first 10 years. The citywide investments in economic opportunity, which exceed $12 million, include City College for Municipal Employment, $4.5 million, going to support for education, training, workforce development, and business development, including relating to employment and contracting opportunities that will come from the arena, ancillary development, and ongoing business activity in adjacent communities. Number two, business readiness programs, $3.75 million. Assistance and support for businesses to prepare them for work associated with the arena and ancillary development, which will be led by the Diverse Chambers Coalition of Philadelphia. Number three, Power Up Your Business, $2 million. Funding to support businesses and aspiring entrepreneurs participating in the Power Up Your Business program at the Community College of Philadelphia. Program offerings will demonstrate cultural competency and be accessible to participants with limited English proficiency. Next, the Business Barrier Fund, $1 million, seed funding for pooled resources to assist small businesses with obtaining insurance, bonding, paying fees, et cetera, that are needed to access work associated with the arena and adjacent development, a combination of direct financial assistance and technical assistance. And lastly, internships, $1 million. Internship and employment onboarding opportunities for high school and college students from disadvantaged communities and local HBCUs, for example, Cheyney and Lincoln Universities, for front of house and back of house roles with the Sixers and in arena operations. Our work together over the coming years is to ensure that the participant pool for these programs continues to diversify. Working together and in collaboration with trusted community partners, we can realize the goal of expanding access to economic opportunity for all. My colleague Mike Carroll will now discuss key aspects of the arena services and event management.
Good morning, Council President and members of Council. My name is Mike Carroll. I'm the Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation and Infrastructure Systems. The Parker administration fully understands the importance of a robust and credible strategy to manage the impacts of events. Analysis of the community impact and the independent traffic and parking reports, reinforced by experience at the South Philadelphia Sports Stadium complex, demonstrate that active engagement before, during, and after arena events is crucial to efficient operations of the arena and effective management of impacts to the community. Experience likewise indicates that a combination of capital improvements, communications, and flexible operational responses are required to manage impacts as they arise. Effective management of event impacts includes the following elements. With respect to planning, the Sixers will be obligated to create an event management and security plan, both under the sublease and through the permitting process required by PennDOT. For coordination and event response, the Sixers will be obligated to participate in regularly scheduled meetings of the Arena Committee that will be formed and chaired by the city and will include SEPTA and other key stakeholders. These meetings will provide for planning in advance of events and analysis of events after they have occurred to allow for course correction. In the construction phase, the Sixers cannot commence work until required demolition, foundation, and/or building permits are issued. In each case, noise and air quality are an element of the city's review. Additionally, any street closures require city approval, and the city will coordinate with the Sixers to minimize disruptions to vehicular and pedestrian access to neighboring businesses. The Sixers will be obligated to provide their schedule of events, including Sixers games, as soon as the schedule is announced by the NBA. Other events which are not part of the NBA will also be required to be communicated with plenty of advance notice. This will allow the committee to plan for confluences with events at the Convention Center, the Reading Terminal Market, and street closures associated with cultural and other festivals. The Sixers have agreed to fund cleanup after events through the Center City District, as well through the community benefits agreements. In addition, the city in Philadelphia may identify additional cleaning services in partnership with the Sixers and will contemplate the activity of an arena district to supplement these roles. With respect to parking, the city has determined through its independent analysis that there is sufficient parking supply to support Sixers games and other events. The Sixers will be required to secure at least 1,000 spaces and have previously announced partnership with the Parkway Corporation and the use of existing technology to manage traffic and provide wayfinding for folks who are looking for parking. On the subject of traffic and pedestrian control and safety, the event management and security plan will identify capital improvements and operational efficiencies to be implemented in partnership with the city and PennDOT. The Philadelphia Police Department and SEPTA will work with the Sixers to identify appropriate levels of officer deployment pursuant to that plan. Communication tools that minimize congestion include the use of navigational software such as Waze, as well as static and variable message signs along highway routes and other approaches. Mobile phone applications will be incorporated, along with information provided through websites and social and traditional media. With respect to public transit, the city's reports indicate that a 40% share of public transit usage for peak event times is achievable, and it is required for the efficient functioning of the street network. Various means will be deployed and updated as required to encourage ridership, including, but not limited to, a subsidy identified in the agreement for public transit use and promotion of public transit use through media and other campaigns. I'll now turn it back to Chief of Staff Tiffany.
Mayor Parker is committed to ensuring Chinatown's continued vitality and position as a treasured cultural community for long-term residents, new residents, and visitors from near and far. On the south side of Market Street, Washington West preserves the history of our country's founders and the city's thriving and iconic neighborhood. The administration is committed to addressing significant pre-existing challenges, including around cultural and community preservation, small business durability, residential and commercial affordability, traffic and parking, safety, and cleanliness. We will leverage the CBA investments, a total of $21.6 million for Chinatown and adjacent communities, including over $14 million to support a new arena services district and $1 million for long overdue master planning processes to launch a comprehensive city-led commitment to Chinatown and Market East. The core components of this commitment were directly informed by community residents and stakeholders. Not surprisingly, similar themes emerge across these conversations. Concerns around housing affordability, small business durability, traffic and parking, safety and cleanliness, and most significantly, preservation of community and cultural community. While most of these long-standing challenges that have developed over decades, the prospect of such a significant construction project as the arena brings them into sharp relief. The time to respond to these challenges in a holistic and strategic way is now. To that end, we have already identified investments, new programs, and policy responses related to the following areas: small business support, traffic and parking, housing, public safety, cleaning and greening, cultural preservation, and community vitality. In close, coordination with Councilmember Squilla, we intend to work in partnership with local residents and stakeholders to further develop and implement a long-term vision to support and enhance the community. We understand the stakes for Chinatown and Washington West residents, businesses, and visitors, and take seriously the responsibility to ensure that the arena project does not negatively impact the community. We look forward to partnering with you, Council President Johnson, Councilmember Squilla, and all members of City Council in finalizing this agreement, which we think offers significant benefits for the city and its residents. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. I just have a couple brief questions during the first round, and then I'll turn it over to my members during the first round. And to members, we'll be doing a clock as well, so we can make this a very, very robust dialogue and discussion as we go throughout this day. I just want to go back to the EOP. Ms. Garcia, you mentioned that this EOP is different than other EOPs that we've implemented here in the city of Philadelphia in the past. So give me an idea of who's going to sit on the EOP Enforcement Board, an Oversight Board. Two, how will this EOP be enforced? And then also, what are the actual goals, the percentages that's the target for this particular EOP?
Thank you, Council President. I am going to call up my colleague, Nicole Stokes, who is the expert in this area.
Good evening, or good morning, right? Happy Tuesday, everybody.
And Nicole, could you just do something for the record for those who may not know? Explain what an EOP is for the wider public, please.
Okay. So my name is Nicole Stokes. I'm an attorney within the law department. An economic opportunity plan is a plan put on projects geared to receiving participation from minority businesses, women businesses, disabled businesses, and workers. And so the point of the EOP is to obtain participation and so that we can have an effective way in our community to benefit from the agreement as well.
Thank you.
I believe the first question was who would be involved on the Oversight Committee. The members of the committee would include a C-suite representative from the 76ers, one representative also selected by the 76ers, a representative of the Office of Economic Opportunity or its successor agency, a representative of the city's Labor Standards Unit, a representative of the city's law department, a city council representative appointed by the city council president, a representative from the local community appointed by the City Council President, a representative of the Building and Construction Trades Council appointed by the Mayor, and a representative appointed by the Mayor who shall serve as the chair of the committee.
And what is the actual target goals for this EOP?
There have been goals set in numerous different categories that range from construction to operations.
Just the actual numbers.
So for skilled laborers, the workforce diversity goals are 37 to 42%, made up of 30% minority, 5 to 10% women, 2% disabled, and 30% local workforce. The goals for general laborers would be made up of 40% minority, 5 to 10% women, 2% disabled, and 30% local. The goals for labor apprentice and pre-apprentice would be 50% minority, 7% women, 2% disabled, and 50% local workforce. There have also been goals set in contracting construction. Contracting diversity goals will be 37 to 52%, made up of 25 to 35% minority business enterprises, 10 to 15% women business enterprises, and 2% disabled business enterprises. There have also been goals set in professional services. Contracting diversity for professional services is made up of 20 to 30% MBE, 10 to 15% WBE, 2% DSBE, which would be disabled business workers, The contracting for furniture, fixtures, and equipment that would go within the arena would be made up of 20 to 30% minority business enterprises, 10 to 15% women business enterprises, 2% disabled business enterprises. There have also been goals set for ongoing operations. For hourly employees, the workforce diversity goals are 60%, made up of 38% minority employees, 20% women, 2% disabled, 75% local workforce. For management employees, that would be made up of 30% minority, 15% women, 2% disabled, and 40% local workforce. For salaried employees, that would be made up of 30% minority, 15% women, 2% disabled, and 40% local workforce. We have also set goals for intern opportunities. That would be made up of 40% minority, 15% women, 2% disabled, 50% local workers. There has also been goals set for general contracting such as janitorial, security, AV, IT, waste management, landscaping, and snow removal. For that category, it's made up of 20 to 30% MBE, 10 to 15% WBE, 2% disabled. For concessions, which includes ownership, contracting, and labor for concessionaires within the arena, the goal is made up of 30 to 40% MBE, 20% WBE, and 2% DSBE.
Thank you. And what was the metrics that were used to actually come up with the actual goals for the various categories that you just mentioned?
We relied on industry experts as well as past studies. We relied on the Office of Economic Opportunity. The Sixers did their own independent study and agreed that this would also be something that they could accomplish. And so, all together, we came up with the goals.
Okay, cool. And I just had another question. And this particular, the committee that was put together is different from other committees that we've used in the past in terms of monitoring EOPs?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the oversight committee that we're creating right now for the Sixers project is different than what we already have been doing in the past in terms of EOP plans.
Yes, in terms of makeup as well. We picked we studied with industry experts, identified the lack of involvement from certain past EOPs, and we specifically targeted the list that I mentioned earlier to make sure that all the key players are included so that the EOP could be effective.
So would this be a model moving forward, irregardless of the size of the actual development project, in terms of making sure it's diverse and inclusive and everybody have a seat at the table?
Yes, we expect so.
Okay, all right. How are we addressing the issue of good faith and best faith efforts, right? Oftentimes, you put out RFP for contracts to come and do work, and from my understanding, sometimes folks will call back and say, we can't find anyone to do this type of work, and therefore you really don't have the opportunity to gauge those numbers. How are we being proactive to address the enforcement around that aspect?
Within the EOP, there are numerous specified actions that constitute an EOP, constitute a good faith effort. That is specific to this EOP. It's more inclusive and detailed than it has been in the past. As a result, there are specific actions that apply in this EOP that may not have been enumerated, and so the Sixers are expected to go through these specific efforts that are enumerated within the agreement, but it's also specific that it's including, but also not limited to, these efforts. It's important to note that there's also reporting, more frequent reporting that's been covered in this EOP despite last EOPs, and as a result, there should be, in a way, a real-time update more frequently of what's going on and what efforts are being made to obtain the inclusion.
Thank you.
If I may, Council President, because I see council members flipping, if you have the EOP in front of you, it's pages 12 to 13. There are 16 different categories that, oh, now everybody is flipping, which require the production of, even attendance logs, right? There are communications that are required, policies of non-discrimination in hiring, agreements, invoices. So it is quite comprehensive, and this is not even everything, right? This is just a sampling of what could be provided that the Oversight Committee will be looking at.
And as my colleague Nicole mentioned, we looked at past EOPs as well, and what we wanted to ensure is that we're not here 30 years from now. Like, what can we learn from the last deals that were struck 30 years ago? And how can we ensure that we have more Black and brown businesses at the table? So to your point, we're not scrambling, right? So that we create a real pipeline for real opportunities. That's what we wanted to make sure. And so that's where that oversight committee comes in. And as you all know, may I make one more point, sir?
Yes.
Just as you all know, our administration, led by our mayor, Mayor Parker, we do not lack the political will for enforcement.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
So, President, I apologize for this. It's just a point of clarification. I was thumbing through to make sure I had this here relative to the.
Speaking your mic.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. This is just a point of clarification regarding your question, Council President. So please don't take this away from my time. But my question is regarding the frequency of the checking. I think you spoke to that in the testimony, the frequency of how you all will monitor on site the EOP goals, both for the construction jobs and for the other professional services goals. What is the actual frequency? I just wanted to be sure.
So for the first period, there's monthly reporting, and then there's quarterly and annual. But when the oversight committee convenes, they will set the cadence, how often they are going to meet as they're receiving all this information, because it's going to be a lot of information. So my vision is in 2025, this oversight committee comes in, and they will work through the governance of how often they are meeting and looking through information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to reserve, because that was just a point of clarification. Thank you, Council President.
No problem, Majority Leader. Your time will be definitely
For more specifics,
conserved. Go ahead,
excuse
Nicole.
me. For more specifics, we've decided that by the 30th day of each month during design and construction period, the developer 76 DevCo shall provide a report to the committee that documents the status and participation of MWDSBE contractors and subcontractors, which will include the name of each company, the trade, the specialty, et cetera. They will also have to report the status of participation for minority, women, disabled, local employment on the project. By the 30th day of the following of each quarter, they are also required to do ongoing operations, and they should provide a report to the committee. And then further, annually, they agree to file annual reporting with OEO and City Council concerning the performance of the EOP through the duration of the project.
Thank you. Is there, I know you talked about internships, and I just want to go on the record, I know I mentioned this briefly, Tiffany, but talk to me about the CBA and support for apprenticeship programs and pre-apprenticeship programs, rather from the Sixers or the administration, to make sure, again, and my line of questioning is just making sure that any event that this proposal does move forward, right, we're making sure that the workforce reflects the city of Philadelphia. We want to make sure that those who have the professional services opportunities represent the city of Philadelphia. And so when we talk about, particularly in the construction industry and making sure it's diverse and it's inclusive, is there support for apprenticeship programs and the pre-apprenticeship programs to make sure young people and people in general have an opportunity to participate in this particular project?
Council President, we have not been here long. We've only been here for, at my calculation, about 11 months. But in this 11 months that we've been here, from day one up until now, we've talked about an economic opportunity for all agenda. And inclusive in that agenda includes workforce development. That's indicative also of our budget address that we wrote out and the budget that council members, that you all passed for our FY25. So we're absolutely committed to workforce development. We're absolutely committed to pre-apprenticeship and career technical education. You see that commitment in the work that we do day in and day out in our current administration, and it's also indicative and clear in this deal that we've reached.
Is it in the CBA, the apprenticeship program?
Yes, sir, it is. You can look at the allocation that we have through our CCME, which stands for City College for Municipal Employment. We will continue to work through those details in close coordination with council.
When we talk about the internships for the young people, where are these internships going to take place at? With the Sixers, city?
A combination of all of the above. We want to make sure that we look differently at internship programs, not just opportunities where folks in high school and college can come in and have a feel-good experience, but we're creating a real pipeline to real employment. That's also evident in our in the EOP that we struck. So what Nicole talked about in terms of management trainees, creating a real pipeline to ensure that people don't just have a one-time experience, but that they get real on-the-job experience for roles in management. So that internship program creates a pipeline well into the management training. And that's something that we fought for. That's something that we said that was a non-negotiable. That was a part of our guiding principles when we sat at the table with the Sixers.
Okay, that's what's up. I'm going to wrap up my line of questioning, but I do have a question from Mr. Michael Carroll. Mike, the transportation study foresees gridlock in Center City if it exceeds more than 40%, 41%. It says 41% of game attendees, if they drive, there will be some level of gridlock. But give me an idea of, some folks think that the traffic will have an impact on the Jefferson Trauma Center, right? Give me an idea, Mike, regarding any event that the arena does move forward. I know you've done extensive work around traffic studies, that any event that there's an emergency, people that's going to and from Jefferson Trauma Center will still be okay.
Yeah, so our independent analysis confirms what you're saying, that the access to the trauma center will be okay, and I'll get into a little bit of detail about that. But I also want to add that Jefferson took a look at this as well, and their CEO concurs that there won't be significant impacts to the
So for the record,
access.
Jefferson Hospital CEO said that there will not be a significant impact on the Jefferson Trauma Center and people getting access to and from this trauma center, correct?
That's correct.
For the record?
That's correct, for the
Okay,
record.
just want to
Yes.
make sure we get that out there.
All I can add is that when you look at the potential impacts, they're spread around. They're not concentrated around any access points or access routes to the emergency room. In general, where we see access, potential impacts, they're coming from an east-west perspective, not a north-south. And the 10th Street corridor, which will be affected as pedestrians come and go from the arena, will be reserved for emergency access. So in fact, there will be police there that will help any emergency vehicles that need to come down that corridor get there probably even faster than they would under normal conditions.
Okay. And last question. Some think that any event that this project moves forward, that the Sixers should be responsible, or the city should be responsible for upgrading the SEPTA station at that particular site. What is the administration's perspective on, or position on that?
That's not something the administration would contemplate.
Okay. Is it your thought that if it's not the administration of the city, it should be the Sixers that should be responsible for upgrading the SEPTA transit?
That responsibility is going to be the subject of conversations between SEPTA and the Sixers. We certainly want to support them reaching an agreement, and so to the extent that we can provide any information or help them talk that through, we're happy to do so, but they need to reach agreement about how they do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your testimony. I have 4 questions. One have already been answered. I occupied that space dealing with affirmative action, and that is a robust plan and action of options. Stuff happens. You need to be able to respond to it, but I appreciate the initial architecture of that plan. The other questions that I have are threefold, and you may not be able to answer them all now, but I expect to answer by the conclusion of these testimonies. Number one, to drill down on what President Johnson talked about, I need to know the SEPTA plan on how people that want to enjoy that Sixers Stadium would get to and from their events, from where they're coming to that station safely. I need to drill down to say, is there going to be a Sixers party train? You said that the traffic was coming east and west. How are you compensating for that by way of ridership, train availability, and the like?
So we're,
Pause. Second part of my question is for more the Commerce Department. It is known that Macy's may not renew their lease. And between Macy's and the site of that stadium, we're looking at 30 to 40% abandonment, lack of occupancy. What is the economic plan for developing that? I heard parts of it that, there might be in a community benefits agreement, loan funds, whatever, but I want to hear about the recruitment and the theme of that recruitment. Is it a Philly experience, a taste of Philly, experience Philly businesses? What is the plan to put businesses in the percentage of businesses that would be local? Number 3, what is the security plan for that corridor during those times of games and events? During the last election, people highlighted nationally some of the challenges that we had in that area and downtown. And one nondescript elected politician described us as Gotham. How do we change that so that suburbanites that wanted to enjoy the festivities that we plan are going to feel comfortable about that? So those are my 3 questions. And now you can begin answering.
okay, I'm going to take on the first one, and I'm going to...
Excuse me, Mike Carroll, just for the record, I just want to let members know you will have 3 minutes, and so to get straight to your question, and then let them give them opportunity to respond.
Okay, I'm going to take on the first one, and then I will defer on the second one. So the SEPTA plan really depends a lot on what SEPTA is working on. So we are in communication with them. To put it as succinctly as possible, the question comes down to, is the service available? So that means that SEPTA has to plan for trains, not special trains, but train service, which is available when the arena events let out. So that's around 10 p.m., past 10 p.m. So the matter at hand is that we expect folks are going to find there's plenty of capacity on the Market Frankfurt line, so that's the east-west. There's going to be plenty of capacity on the Broad Street line, which will, within the city's boundaries, get you north-south. But when folks are coming from the suburbs, we need to make sure that that regional rail capacity is there. And so that's what SEPTA is working on, making sure that they have capacity for folks who are going to and from the suburbs to attend events. And that's where most of the work is going to be focused. So we're supportive of that work. We can make sure that, on the street, the access to the concourses is dealt with. All the head houses are available. They're free and clear. Our police will be involved in that. Event staff will be involved in that. But once people get to the platform, they need a train to get on in order to get out of Philadelphia, out to the suburbs. And that's one of the keys here.
I'm gonna need a little more detail as to the safety component of that when people are let out of those events. People coming, everybody should be safe on SEPTA. People come off of the second shift at night, want to feel like they can get to my district, 60th and Market, safely. In particular, people that aren't very urban, that are going back to the suburbs, I need to know a little more in depth how we're going to deal with both safety and the perception of safety.
That's absolutely. Right now, and since the beginning of this administration, we have met regularly, and we will continue to meet regularly through our Office of Public Safety, our Director, Adam Gear, with Commissioner Bethel, our Police Commissioner. They work very closely around safety and perceptions of safety with their counterparts at SEPTA. That will continue to happen as we continue to have discussions around what's going to happen, not just down at Market East for what's happening down there through this deal, but citywide. So absolutely, that is an ongoing priority, and those are ongoing meetings that we're having, and that accountability is key. So absolutely, Council Member.
So to your discretion, Mr. President, would you like me to defer on question 2 and 3 and to allow further dialogue, or can I proceed?
I would like for question 2 and 3 to be answered.
So with regards to the Macy's and the development that's happening in and around that parcel, I'd like to call up Jesse Lawrence, our Director of Planning and Development.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So my name is Jesse Lawrence. I'm the Director of Planning and Development. Essentially, what we're setting the stage for is the Market East Master Plan. The master plan will look at how we will guide growth, how we want to grow in anticipation of development. It will look at ways that we leverage the existing opportunities for development, those that are past, present, and future. That master plan will really be intentional on not just the growth, but all the things that support quality of life issues, looking at, how we can be intentional about, development, improving safety. One of the biggest things in quality of life along the corridor is vacancy. In our observation, about a quarter of retail storefronts from City Hall down to the Independence Mall, they are vacant. If you go south to Chestnut Street, a third of those storefronts are vacant. So we're looking at ways to make sure it'll be, it'll look at ways to look at how vacant properties, vacant sites, those that are, structures that are vacant.
Can I get a point of information? To follow what my colleague is getting at as well. So there's a thought that any event that this arena is built in Center City, it will spur development along that corridor. Can you elaborate that around that particular theory that if this arena is built, it will revitalize East Market Street? Can you elaborate
so
on that,
East Market Street is essentially a main street that once was, it's not is right now. And adding the elements of what's being presented here as another anchor to leverage the existing anchors that have been pitched over time. The thought is that it would spur development. It would be a catalyst for that development. The vibrancy that would return by way of jobs, tax revenue, attractiveness for the most part. The arena itself presents a proposal on both sides of Market Street, but the thought is to not depend on just the arena. There's a qualitative aspect, but there's also a quantitative aspect. We can make the corridor attractive by assembling these parcels and jump-starting the development along the corridor, but we can't bring other people to develop those, key vacant parcels until we insert something. There have been some attempts to do that over time. Unfortunately, we got hit with COVID, which really kind of stalled it. I know that, there's a sense of, diversifying those uses. We are looking at the addition of, just retail and also residential. Office space could be something on the potential on the horizon, but that would be responsive to whatever the market is right now.
So, thank you, Mr. President, for that. I want to know, in that theme, how much emphasis will be given to Philly, Taste of Philly, Philly-based businesses that might be successful in other parts of Philadelphia being attracted to that corridor, to benefit from that corridor. When we went to Chicago most recently, when you go out of your hotel, maybe to go to a sporting event, you don't want to go to Five and Below. You want to experience something that represents our city. How are we focusing in on that opportunity?
So there's a thought that we would be looking into an arena services district, and part of that requires us working with small businesses that are in the immediate area. We'll be looking to support the programs that would be in collaboration with some very key community-based partners, and that conversation will be had about how to incorporate the local aspects into whatever we do as far as potential retail and uses within the arena as well. Somebody want to?
Did you get your last question answered, Councilman
No,
Jones?
not yet. Security.
So,
And I just want to add one part on security, and I'm just being fair because we're going to ask questions on both sides. But the CBA does cover a significant amount of security cameras and lighting for that immediate area. I know because we reviewed this information with the district council member, but also was proposed from the administration. So you want to elaborate on it?
Yeah, that's a big part of the answer. And in fact, we are starting to plan out the configuration of the deployment of more cameras, significantly more cameras, a broader area of coverage. So in particular, getting feedback from neighbors in Chinatown, Washington West, others where we really don't have significant deployment for that purpose. That will be in place. We do have LED lighting in most of this area, but we have the opportunity to upgrade that lighting with potentially more fixtures, but also one of the benefits of the LED lighting that we're putting in place citywide is we can actually control remotely how bright it is. We can manage that remotely, we can manage it, push it to the button, but we can also make sure that the lights are maintained in a state of good repair so that there aren't these dark spots that occur with the old-fashioned lights that we replace. So we've got a good strategy on that front. I will say with respect to the security, people's perceptions thereof, of the SEPTA system, I think we are on the right track, and it's certainly going to be a challenge for people to, extend beyond the post-pandemic world that we're seeing in front of us now to 2030, 31, 32. But the trends are moving in the right direction. So, for example, just the one measure I think speaks to it is the ridership levels on SEPTA. And if you go back to the winter of 2021, we were about 40%. Most recently, looking at the information we have, we crossed 70%. So my expectation is by 2027, 2028, we're kind of back to what things were like in 2019. There's a lot of work, as the Mayor's Chief of Staff said, to coordinate with our police, our Office of Public Safety, SEPTA Police, which is staffing up, to get a handle on what's going on the system and make sure we're very responsive to the feedback we get from riders, from people who live and work around the SEPTA system, and I think we're on the right track.
I just would end with, Mr. President, I don't want to create an environment along this corridor that makes people want to clutch their pearls. Mm-hmm. I do want there to be an environment where people feel safe. And sometimes you don't do that by overdoing the boots on the ground, but it's more subtle, cameras and other kinds of deployment of police. But we only get one chance to make a first impression.
Absolutely.
And that is going to be nationally looked at. So I'm looking for, as we go forward, Mr. President, a little more detail in each of those plans so that we can evaluate it and give it feedback. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Member Jones. The chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gaudier. Point of information, the chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Also, too, as part of the CBA, I know that there was a public safety headquarters being proposed on Market Street that would include incorporating a location that would coordinate between the police, SEPTA, PATCO, and Jefferson, right? And that was going to be also within to really go and work on a 5 or 6 block area surrounding that location.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And on event day, that's going to be a crucial element to making sure we reach that standard you're setting, Council Member.
I do have a question, though, regarding public safety. So I'm from South Philly, right? And in South Philly, down in the Stadium District area, the police patrol the whole neighborhood during every game, right? And that was part of a deal that took place when the stadium was first built, that neighborhood is pretty much, I'm not even gonna say protected, because you still have unrulies that leave the games and still do a lot of things in neighborhoods, and we get the phone calls about it, but for the most part, you have police officers, I guess through a contract with the city, that governs that area on games. Will it be something similar when it comes to the games downtown?
Yeah.
Since the Sixers may move downtown.
Yeah, we have a very present and active police force, and that won't change. That will continue. Their presence will be felt. And to Councilmember Jones's point, the perception of safety is very important, as well as the reality of safety. So absolutely.
Thank you very much. Councilman Jamie Gaudier.
Thank you, Council President, and thanks so much to the administration for being here today. My first questions are about SEPTA. I know that I don't need to remind anyone in this chamber how much everyone in the city relies on SEPTA to get around. We know that SEPTA has been struggling financially for a while, so asking them to absorb any cost, whether construction or operational, to subsidize the Sixers arena hurts the entire city. If SEPTA's financial stability is not explicitly addressed in the legislation, we should not vote for the arena. So with that, my first question is around construction cost. My understanding is that the initial cost for renovations to Jefferson Station because of the arena construction would be or could be as high as $30 million. These costs include lost revenue and changes to the station, including removing and reinstalling an HVAC system that was very recently renovated. Will we have the exact cost estimates for renovations renovation before this legislative body takes a final vote?
So we know that, and working with SEPTA and meeting with SEPTA, that they are currently doing a financial analysis, and that those numbers are forthcoming. They have not been finalized yet. And so absolutely, as those numbers are finalized, I know that SEPTA will share that. And in terms of our administration understanding the importance of SEPTA and the importance that it plays to even the vitality and the in-person work that we are calling our staff, our administration to do. We have demonstrated in the FY25 budget that we support SEPTA. Rob DeBoe, our Director of Finance, will speak to that. But absolutely, those numbers will be shared with you as they're shared with us. But Rob?
The explicit question is, will we have the exact cost estimates for the SEPTA renovation, which could be as much as $30 million before this legislative body takes a vote on the arena package?
As soon as we receive those numbers, you all will receive those numbers, if you don't receive them at the same time that we receive them. We have not received them yet, so we are waiting for that. Those numbers are not finalized. But I know, Councilmember Gaultier, I know that our Director of Finance, if that's okay, wanted to speak to the financial aspect of SEPTA.
Sure.
Thank you.
So in our proposed budget, we put in an amount that would equal the match required for the proposal that the governor put forward in his proposed budget.
Yes.
That meant increasing our contribution from $109 million to $133 million, so $24 million increase. As you know, the state didn't adopt what the governor proposed. They adopted about a third of what they would have gotten under the governor's proposal. We maintained that higher amount in our budget, and council approved that higher amount. So together, we kept that $133 million in the budget, which meant that we put in much more than our match requirement as kind of a way of showing how important SEPTA was to us.
I just want to, Councilmember, I just want to add that the Sixers are on the hook for all the construction and infrastructure costs for the subway station. What I believe the contention is now is the increased service costs, running trains late at night, and I'm sure the SEPTA will speak to that tomorrow when they're, but per the deal, they have to pay for all the construction infrastructure.
Why is that not explicitly laid out in the legislation?
It is in the term sheet. I don't have all of the, that is something in the term sheet and in the sublease agreement, and I'll find you the exact provision in the term sheet. So it was not necessary to put in the legislation. I know there's will be lots of questions tomorrow about the service and operations aspect to it.
Can I get a follow-up question on record quickly? My understanding is that 76 DevCo traffic estimates are based on a 40% ridership rate among fans, which has already been mentioned. Currently, regional rail evening service at Jefferson Station runs every 1 to 2 hours. The only chance we have to get to 40% ridership would require regional rail to run every 15 to 30 minutes after games. This would produce a shortfall for SEPTA, according to them, of $20 million to $25 million per year net of ticket sales revenue. Who will pay for these costs, and where does the legislation specify this?
So I think, as was mentioned before, the city feels confident that we have done our part in terms of over subsidizing SEPTA's operating budget, and in terms of setting aside the $3 million in the community benefits agreement, which can further subsidize transit fares. So we encourage SEPTA and the Sixers to try and reach an agreement. We recognize the fact that that service needs to be there, and that goes to my previous comments. We can't have people ride trains that don't exist. So we fully acknowledge that there is a need to add service in order for us to meet those goals, but we're in a role of supporting conversations between other entities to reach that agreement.
Do you think it's important for us to have answers to these questions around significant costs before we vote on the arena package, or do you think it could just kind of be like an unknown?
Well, I think it's not just a question of legislation, it's a question of the highway occupancy permit that PennDOT is going to require the Sixers. It's a question of the lease agreement itself. And so these are questions that we have an opinion, and we can share the opinion, but we can't force either the Sixers or SEPTA to reach an agreement. There's details that need to be worked out. I think it was mentioned before, we don't have all the details right now from SEPTA. So as we get information, we may be able to clarify that response, but that's where we stand right now.
Thank you so much, Council President.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning to the listening public. Thank you all for being a part of this robust conversation. I'm sure you all know where I'm going to go with this. So my first question is really more of a concern. If we are allowing the Sixers, hypothetically speaking, to have an arena, which this proposal is presenting, why is it that we're not mandating for the Sixers, the entity, the actual company itself? I don't know if it's an LLC or whatever type of entity it is. Why would that entity not have to relocate back to the city of Philadelphia by the time the arena is built in 2031?
Councilmember, if that is something that you would like to request or ask or require of the Sixers, we will not stand in the way of that.
So, Council President, I do want to go on the record that I think that it would be a good idea that if this proposal is granted, right, and I'm thinking about the tax revenue for the city of Philadelphia, currently right now, the entity, the Sixers entity, is a New Jersey-based company. And I will definitely put this on the record tomorrow. If we do agree to give them an arena, I think part of the deal should be that the company itself be headquartered in the city of Philadelphia, so we're not just getting that wage tax 41 days a year, we're getting it 365 days a year. Now, you can practice anywhere you want, right? I'm a basketball guy, I get it. You can practice anywhere you want. I don't care where you practice. I care where you clock in at 9 a.m. So I wanted to put that on the record first and foremost. Secondly, the mayor talked and the mayor's team talked a lot about this being a phenomenal deal for black businesses. At some point throughout the course of this hearing today, because I don't want you to take all of my time talking about it, but can you give us more details about how black businesses will benefit from this deal, specifically listening to some of the agreements that I listened to Council President communicate, Councilmember Jones communicate, and us not having all of the details to be able to make that mandatory. Now, I'm not talking about the construction side. The construction side is only one part of it. I'm going to push the 20% number on professional jobs, right? I heard the 20% number, which relates to architects and professional jobs. I want to push that number to be even higher than 20%, but at some point throughout the course of our conversation today, can you make sure that you elaborate specifically how black businesses will benefit from the building of the arena once the arena is already built? Not the construction jobs, the professional jobs that's in the arena, the opportunity for people to own businesses and have storefronts and things of that capacity. So please talk about that at some point before we leave today. The next thing, I want to thank Councilmember Jamie Gaudier for talking about the traffic and the SEPTA thing. I think she's absolutely right. That was one of my questions. We kind of need a little more details on that before we take the vote. I understand you're saying that it's between the Sixers and SEPTA, but the general public don't look at it that way. They just see us all as government. So the reality is that for us, it would be very beneficial to have that information before we take this vote so we understand any type of unintended or ill-advised consequences that could present itself, especially since I just think it was today or maybe yesterday, SEPTA announced like a 20% increase in their fares. So we do need to know details on that. As I close out, Council President, because I heard the buzzer, what I do want you to talk about on the record right now is Chinatown. So every Thursday I sit here, and I'm so close to public comment. Chinatown has said that they have not had an opportunity to meet with the mayor to talk about this issue robustly. Can you please, for the record, give us information, detailed information on all of the meetings you've had with the Chinatown community, and also please talk to us about why there's only $1.6 million in the grant to assist businesses impacted by construction, when I believe when we did I-95, I believe that 2-week process or so cost us about $5 billion that we spent on business disruption. So if we did $5 million for about 2 weeks, help us understand how $1.6 million is going to last 10 years.
So the first I'd like to do is to ask John Monlack, our Chief of Staff for Planning and Development, to come up and talk about the meetings that we've had. As he's coming up, let me be very clear. We have had ongoing stakeholder engagement meetings with members representing Chinatown, Market East, most recently Wash West Civic Association. There is ongoing engagement and conversations that we'll continue to have, but I unequivocally, or I want to be very clear, We have had meetings, we'll continue to have meetings. We are an open-door administration.
So, Council-
So to that end, if I may,
Yeah, I want to hear, but I want to be very clear. I'm not accusing the mayor or the admin of anything. I'm not saying you guys haven't or have not had meetings. So I apologize if my tone is
no.
one that suggests that you have or have not done something. I'm just letting you know that every Thursday we're here. It is communicated on a consistent basis that people are being ignored and their voice is not being heard. So I think it's important that you put the information on the record. Who have we met with? What have the conversations consist of? Who was present? I think that is something that's really important. And before I close out, please just explain to me the 1.6 million number, because that number doesn't make sense to me.
absolutely. So as I shared, we've had ongoing meetings and engagement with all stakeholders throughout the city, including those representing Chinatown. There are a number of Chinatown stakeholders and organizations, groups that are both for and against this deal. We recognize that. We've opened our door and had those meetings. John Monlack, our Chief of Staff for Planning and Development, will go through a list of all of those meetings and the engagement, and then we'll go in and answer your additional questions.
Thank you, Councilman. My name is John Mondlak. I'm the Chief of Staff to Department of Planning and Development. And I'm going to just summarize the meetings that have taken place in the last year or so with members of Chinatown. As far as actual participants, I'll have to follow up with names if that's what interests you. But essentially, we met monthly with the No Arena Coalition. And again, we can provide some names. Starting back in over a year ago, the dates would have been, and again, not every single month, but there's about 10 meetings. I think we had to miss a couple because of scheduling. But we met June 1st, 2023, June 2nd, 2023, July 14th, 2023, September 8th, 2023, October 13th, 2023, January 26, 2024, February 16th, 2024, March 8th, 2024, May 10th, 2024, June 14th, 2024. In those meetings, I'm sorry.
I just want to do a point of information as well, and again, we just doing transparency. I see Sam Rose there, and I represent PIDC. When we first started this process, you talked about the Chinatown Coalition being a part of the actual initial planning of the actual study, what went into the study. So you may want to also provide the council member also additional information after John Malnack.
I could even add that in, and if Sam wants to add more, that's fine. So in those meetings where, again, the No Chinatown Coalition, it was senior folks at the Department of Planning and Development along with PIDC. Early in the meeting, we shared the scope of work and the RFP responses to all of the studies, and we took their input into our selection of who we selected, and we also modified the scope of the community impact to accommodate some of their requests. We couldn't accommodate all of their requests, but we did modify the scope to incorporate some of their requests. So that was initially. The rest of the meetings throughout the year focused on status of the impact studies, lots of questions about process, how this would unfold when it came into the public process, what commissions and boards it would go to, what is the procedure, what is the process. So there's a lot of fact-finding questions that we answered. And there was also a fair amount of lobbying because they made their position very well known that they were opposed to this. At the time, we were gathering information, doing the studies to try to inform a decision. So we had, nothing to say to that, but we entertained, again, the conversation around why they thought it would be adversely affecting Chinatown.
So I think more details about those meetings would really be important and helpful for us because, again, that's not the information that's communicated on Thursdays in council sessions. So we would definitely want to see who was there, maybe how many people you may have been able to persuade to be with you. Like, did that happen and things of that capacity?
We were not trying to persuade anybody.
Okay, got you. That's amazing. So I know my time is up.
We had not made a position clear at that point. We didn't have a position. It was really just an information exchange. They had a position for sure. We did not have a position.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. My last question was the 1.6 million for business disruption. I was just wondering, where did that number come from? And if we were to approve this project, how can we assure that that's the right amount of money when we spent like $5 million on business disruption on I-95?
I wasn't done with the meetings.
Well, I'm out of time, and the council president has to move on. I'm sure that there's
Okay,
been a lot of
there's quite a-
information,
there's
but what
quite
we're
a bit
asking for
more.
is, we're asking for the members of city council to get a summary of the meetings.
Understood.
What was taking place during those meetings, because again, that's not the information that's communicated to us. So if you could just help us with a brief synopsis of that stuff. I think you giving those dates that you did and that timeline was extremely important, and that was something that I was not aware of.
Okay.
So if you can give us like a brief summary similar to the other information, that would be helpful, because I don't want to monopolize the time.
And
I
I'm
do
at-
think the 1.6 million is important, and at some point I have to pass it to one of my colleagues. So if I can just get an answer to why we did 1.6 million for business disruption, I can save my line of questioning for the second round.
Okay, I just want to make clear that there are many more dates that I'm going to have.
I'm sure there are, and we would like to have, and maybe if Council President, do you want them to put the rest of the dates on the record? I'm just trying not to monopolize too much time.
No, it's fine. I just want to
No,
make clear that
it would be
that's
more prudent that you just provide
understood.
the chair and members of the committee of the whole the actual documents detailing your actual meetings.
Thank you for that.
We are very happy to do that. Regarding the black and brown businesses, thank you, John. We'll bring up Nicole.
Okay, regarding black and brown businesses, first I would like to note that within this plan, minority is defined as a person who is African American, has origins in any of the black racial groups in Africa, Hispanic Americans, a person of Spanish or Portuguese culture within the origins of Mexico, South or Central America, the Caribbean islands, regardless of race, Asian American having origins in the Far East, Southeast Asia, and Indian, and then also the subcontinent or the Pacific Islands, or Native American having origins in the original peoples of North America. So that is what's incorporated into minority in this plan. To your point, it's important to note that the EOP plan contemplates businesses such as janitorial and building cleaning, security, audio, visual production, IT services, snow removal, landscaping, waste management, food and beverage operations, and other building operations and management services. Furthermore, it contemplates concessions. Within this agreement, concessions is defined as the sale of products or the rendition of services for consideration on or using the arena.
Can I interrupt? Because that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But I don't have the amount of time right now because my time is up. If I can move on, I just really need you to answer the question about the $1.6 million for the Business Disruption Fund. I really need to understand, why do we think that $1.6 million is enough when we spend $5 million on I-95? We're going to dance around black businesses. That's going to be a long dance. But the Business Disruption Fund, if I can get that answered, then I can submit my time and come back for the second round. Why do we think $1.6 million is enough if we're looking at, almost a decade of construction where we spend $5 million on a couple weeks?
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Sophie Bryan, Chief Policy
How are you,
Officer.
Sophie? Good
I'm
to
doing
see you.
well. Good to see you as
Yes.
well. So the math and the rationale behind this, the average amount that Commerce Department uses for business disruption is around $20,000. So we calculated 40 businesses immediately proximate to the arena and had a dollar amount of $20,000 per business times 4 years, which was the anticipated construction period. And then we did divide that in two. And I think our thought process there is we would leverage that $1.6 million and bring additional investment in. I think an important thing to note here is the I-95 example, sort of like seismic and massive with full closures of streets. And I think as Mike Carroll has mentioned and can go into more detail about, we're not planning on full street closures here. So I think the thought is less disruptive. But to your specific question about why that amount, based on what Commerce Department sort of estimates for similar kinds of efforts around large-scale construction projects.
So do you anticipate, if that number isn't enough, getting revenue from either us on the city side or support from our state partners?
Or philanthropy. I think this is a case where sort of the Mayor's Office of Strategic Partnerships could come into great practice. I think there's a lot of attention and focus on the arena, so it is an opportunity to rally the civic community, the philanthropic community, the business community, to help support businesses that might be impacted.
Sorry for cutting so many people off, but my time is so short, so please don't take it as disrespect or anything like that. I'm just trying to get a lot on the record. Council President, thank you, sir. I would definitely want to tee up for a second round because a lot of that was abbreviated that I wanted to put on the record.
Absolutely.
Thank you to the
Chair recognizes Deputy Whip Cindy Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions, and actually, a lot of the questions I was going to ask have been asked already, but there are some things I'd like to go over just for clarity's sake. Just talking about what Councilman Isaiah Thomas just mentioned around the supports for existing businesses, and the $1.6 million. And so, you know, in doing a little research and actually being around for a minute, and recognizing that when we did the work, I was a congressional staffer when we did the work on the Market Frankfurt L line, and the amount of dollars that were allocated to those businesses, many of whom ended up going out of business anyway, but this pales in comparison. So we're talking about a one-time $1.6 million investment versus when that project was happening, it was over, I forget exactly how long, but let's say roughly like 6 to 7 years or so. And the amount that was spent on those businesses was between $2 and $3 million per year. And so this number at $20,000 per business or 40 business per business is really just not a reasonable amount of funding, in my opinion, to make sure that we're able to keep these businesses afloat. The other thing around the amount of traffic in the area, and I know you said that you didn't expect that it would be the same as 95 in terms of street closures. I think it'll be the same, if not worse, because you'll have gridlock, you'll have difficulty parking. People may not feel comfortable trying to find a parking space, walk all the way back to Chinatown and so forth. So there is going to be significant disruption. So I just, you know, want us to figure out how do we revisit that 1.6 number, because it's not adequate. So that's my first question. Another question that I had was around, Madam Chief of Staff, your statement about notice required to the city that once the schedule comes out, then the Sixers will be required to provide a schedule to the city, or actually they would be required. But the question I have on the other side is for Sixers, or whether there's concerts or whatever, is there, even though the notification is required, is there also a corresponding approval required by the city for those activities? So does the city, do they just tell us what they're going to do, or do we have a say? And, you know, like, listen, if you want to get a block party permit, you know, you got to get approval from the city. And so are we going to have some sort of say in terms of what actually is going to be happening and on what days? And does that conflict with, you know, Wow Welcome America or Made in America or some other major activity that we had? So what will the city say be in those manners? And then I had some other questions related to SEPTA, but I'll come back to those.
So I'll turn it to Mike Carroll to talk about our robust event management plan.
So generally speaking, when it comes to Sixers games, you're not in a position to be negotiating with the Sixers. You're negotiating with the National Basketball Association. So generally speaking, that will be pretty much what we're told is going to happen.
So outside of the Sixers, what about the other events, concerts, activities that will be happening? Do we have a say as a city in terms of like an approval process? Or is it that they're just going to tell us, we book this on this day, we book that on that day? Is there any say that the city of Philadelphia has, or is it just?
There's a big difference between a say and approval. So we will communicate to them any conflicting events. We will communicate to them the additional requirements in terms of managed events. At the end of the day, typically it will be their business decision to figure out whether that's worthwhile or not. But what you need to keep in mind is that their event goers, attendees experience is the same experience as everybody else's. So their interest is to make sure that there's good coordination. The people that are attending their events aren't impacted in ways by everything else going on. And so it's sort of a mirror situation. They can't then turn around and tell us, oh, you can't do this because we're having a concert, or you can't do that because we're having a game. We have to coordinate, and that's the purpose of the structures we've put in place, to make sure there's good coordination.
So you expect there'll be coordination, but not approvals?
We're requiring coordination, and it's in all the documents that we've talked about, including the lease agreement, including this legislation we're talking about, including the highway occupancy permit that PennDOT's
So you require coordination, but not approvals?
And Councilmember, if I say from a legal perspective, you do not want to be in the business of approving, I mean, that gets into First Amendment and government speech issues. if we're saying that you can have
I
this and you
understand
can't
what you're
have
saying,
that.
but I also think that, there might be a time, and I don't know in what particular instance, but I'm just saying that the city of Philadelphia might at some point have to say, this doesn't work because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And be able to, make a call and say, this is not going to be a possibility.
So typically, the category that falls into that is something that's along the lines of Homeland Security. So if there are life safety issues that come up around the coincidence of events, we have police powers throughout the city of Philadelphia. The state similarly, also the federal government can step in and dictate exactly what is and what is not going to happen.
I think also, we're not new to this, right? Like, we see robust coordination happening down at the existing sports complex, right? We see existing coordination happening through our Office of Special Events under Giselle Jones, our city representative. So we're not new as an administration or as a city proper in working with different entities around coordinating around large-scale events or even smaller-scale events. So yes, we will work with Reading Terminal, the Marriott. We will work with, all of the entities that even Mike mentioned to ensure that there is robust coordination. So we're not displacing the flower show. We're still going to have the flower show. And should this deal be passed, we also look forward to having games and different events that will take place at this new site. Regarding the Business Disruption Fund, there is the $1.6 million allocation, but we also have $14.1 million in our CBA or through our CBA that is allocated through the Arena Services District that will also address some of those concerns around business disruption. But I want to go back to a point that I made earlier. Our administration does not lack political will. We have to see small businesses thrive. Black and brown businesses thrive. All businesses thrive. That's not going to change with this deal. That's why we didn't just rush to get to yes. That's why we made sure that we did our homework. That's why we made sure that we went on the learning journeys, going from different cities across the East Coast to see how other cities did it, what they learned from it, and ensuring that we learned from their learnings, from their what they did well and what they would do differently. Should they go back? And that is what's represented here. And that's how we could say that this is historic and a deal that we're proud of.
So let me just add this then. So so we've done the research, we've looked at all these other places and what they have done. If we have another what did you say the number was,
14.1 some odd million dollars for the Arena Services District.
So if we have those funds and we have the ability to use them for this effort to make sure that those businesses don't go out of business, then I would say, let's not have this sort of slush fund or pot of gold sort of like set aside. Let's really put those funds in and dedicate them. Let's dedicate those dollars to make sure that those businesses are not going to be gone by the time that this arena is built. I think that ensuring that we front load those dollars now is going to be crucial to ensuring that we have a Chinatown by the time the Sixers arena, assuming it is going to be built, by the time that that's said and done, that those funds are available. I don't think that setting them on the side and saying, oh, well, we have some other funds that maybe we can put in or maybe we'll bring forward, once we run out of the 1.6, because that 1.6 is going to go in like 5 minutes. It's not enough.
And we have a Commerce Department and an administration that's going to ensure
so let's
that
front
small
load
businesses.
that. So let's front load that all now. Let's not talk about 1.6. Let's talk about whatever the end number is. And listen, if it's too much money at the end and we have to, move some around back to Commerce, that's fine. But let's not start out shorting the businesses that are going to need these funds. And let me just say one other thing real quick, because I know my time is up and I'll come back around. Regarding the whole SEPTA situation, I know that some of my colleagues have touched on that. I don't believe any of my colleagues do either. I don't believe that the city of Philadelphia can sort of sit back and say SEPTA and Sixers work it out. Work it out, who's paying for this?
And let me be very clear, council member, we are not sitting back. There's nothing about our approach or what we do day in and day out to suggest that we're sitting back. We're in ongoing, active conversation with SEPTA and the Sixers. That is not our approach. That is not who we are.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. But what I want to say is, I had a briefing with SEPTA this morning about this matter. and they're saying that, SEPTA's saying they're not paying for these costs. They're not going to do it. And so the question is, who's going to do it? If they're saying they're not going to, and I know you, and I know that you can be very direct and can reach out to them and say, all right, who's going to be paying for the work at Jefferson Station? Because you've said that it's not going to be, the Sixers have said that there's not going to be any cost that the taxpayers have to absorb. This will be a cost that the taxpayers have to absorb.
No, I want to make sure that I clarify, and then I'll kick it over to Mike. With regards to costs, the Sixers are paying the construction costs for SEPTA. We can go through additional details through Mike Carroll.
So the construction costs will boil down to the details of the construction itself, and that is not fully worked out. We have seen the Sixers propose a couple different approaches to how they want to do construction. I think they're zeroing in on exactly what that is.
Okay.
I just have a point of information, Madam Bass, just real quick. Is there analysis from your conversation with SEPTA that there will be an increase in ridership if the stadium is built or not?
There would be, as long as the service is there. So that service has to exist, which doesn't exist after 10 p.m.
So the cost to them is the more additional services?
That's right.
Okay. But they will have the increase in ridership, so you have to see if you want to make more based upon the services that you're putting out.
Well, I can't speak to the calculations SEPTA went through, whether they break even, it costs them more or costs them less, but I think what they're saying is that at the end of the day, they need more operating revenue or operating funds in order to provide that service. So that service can't just be there on game day. It has to be there every day, otherwise people won't be able to rely on it. And you can't pay the folks who operate just for those game days. It has to be an established service. That's their position on the service.
Okay. I'm gonna give it back to Councilmember Bass, but I think SEPTA's number one priority right now should be taking care of the workers at TWU right now, and that keeps the city moving forward.
Yeah.
So, Councilmember Bass?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And as the sister of a TWU, TWU employee, we want to make sure that SEPTA's, keeping that in mind. But I guess some of these questions will be brought up because SEPTA, I believe, is going to be testifying tomorrow or so. Okay.
Next week.
Oh, it's next one, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was tomorrow. Okay, all right. Well, very good. So, all right, so we'll circle back, but I think that there is some confusion around who's paying for what regarding Jefferson Station, and we just want to all be clear and have that laid out, so thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
And we also realize that there's some confusion around business disruption. And to the point that Mike Carroll made earlier, we will make sure that we continue to work tirelessly regarding accountability to ensure that there is little to no street closures and disruption. That is what's important to this administration. We do not want to see any small business go out of a business as a result of this project and street closures that we have control over.
I do want to thank you for saying that part because I was around when I wasn't an elected official. I think I might have been a staffer when the L train with SEPTA, of all companies, played a major role in really not protecting the businesses along Market Street, 46, all the way up to 63rd, and those businesses went out of business. And so hindsight 2020, we at least had an opportunity to look into, as we move forward, particularly traffic flow. And when you're doing construction, shutting down corridors, and it having an impact of people going in and outside the businesses to patronize them.
And Council President, that's why we opened with having Mike Carroll here at the table to send a strong signal to the city, to members of council, and whoever's watching today. We care about small businesses. We care about making sure that we make good on our promise around economic opportunity for all.
Yeah, I would just say, we are going to require the Sixers to provide us with construction plans, with what we call maintenance protection of traffic plans, which meet the goals we're looking for. So we have the opportunity, when we get in the details of reviewing that, to identify specific impacts to specific neighbors, to specific businesses, and ensure that those impacts are not detrimental. And then we will rely on the resource that we set aside to make sure we're able to compensate folks when we see those impacts are unavoidable.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Minority Leader Brooks.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to clarify that I'm a no vote to this procedural vote because I feel like it's an example of how this whole process is being rushed. You know, I have problems with the community benefits agreement, and I had this conversation before that I feel like it's a bad deal for everyone other than the billionaires who own this arena. And according to the election pollsters, 70% of Philadelphians said that they don't want this. So if people don't want this arena for many reasons, whether it's displacement in Chinatown, low wages jobs that come with this stadium, and people across Philadelphia love the South Philadelphia Sports Arena complex. But most importantly, this is not the priority of this council body should be focusing on right now in these coming weeks. During the time when we have hearings going on about a proposed school closings, we have a housing crisis that we're failing to address, and an impending Trump administration that has Philadelphia at its target. I have to ask my colleagues, like, is this really our top priority right now? There's so many other things that we should be worrying about besides pleasing Josh Harris, David Blitzer, and David Edelman, and the 6 billionaire owners that are pushing for a deal that will only benefit them, not the average Philadelphians. They're building an arena that's estimated to cost $1.5 billion, which would raise the cost of the land parcel. Independent estimates have shown that they would potentially bring in $40 million in property taxes. The community benefits agreement does not reflect this. So my question, is the administration aware of the pollster that have found that 50% of the city does not support the arena proposal? And what should we tell them when they ask us? And do you think that the pollsters were wrong about this?
I can't speak to the pollsters, but let me tell you what I can speak to. I can speak to the mayor's agenda, to the Parker administration's agenda, and to our guiding principles. We did not come to a decision quickly or lightly. In addition to the learning journey that we did, and we looked also at third-party independent verifiers to look at the terms of the deal and to say, yes, this is a good deal, or no, this is not a good deal. And that's indicative of our approach even when we went to the convention center and rolled out the methodology and the step-by-step process that we took to get here. I want to go back to our guiding principles: stewardship of city resources, unlocking long overdue redevelopment of Market East, maximizing the potential of citywide impact, also focusing on large-scale development, ensuring city residents and businesses from groups historically excluded from participation have access to employment and contracting opportunities. With regards to the housing crisis and housing affordability, our CBA directly answers that as well. I would like to call up Jesse Lawrence, our Director of Planning and Development, to speak to that.
Let me finish all my questions and then you girls can speak because I don't want to run out my time.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. So we've heard that many complaints from Chinatown and surrounding neighborhoods that they were not being consulted about the CBA, and I appreciate you running down the dates that you were able to meet with people. But when you were negotiating the community benefits agreement, which organizations did you consult with locally in Center City and across the city?
So first I'll call up John, I'd like to call up first John Monlack to answer that question, and then around the housing affordability, housing crisis, Jesse Lawrence can follow him. So John Monlack.
Hi again, Jesse Lawrence, Director of Development, Planning and Development. Just to speak to what we're working on when it comes to housing, again, the CBA has a $3 million commitment that will be committed to looking at how we can provide seed funding for a larger project, a larger program. It's an initial investment that's supposed to work on a range of things that are really look at how the city can coordinate housing, specifically housing programs in Chinatown. That programming will include affordability opportunities, preservation, rental assistance, senior housing, home ownership support as well. But it'll, again, be leveraged in what will be also a Chinatown master plan. I spoke of a master planning earlier. There will be a specific Chinatown master plan that will look at many aspects, including housing. Ultimately, it's the administration's initiative to really make sure that we stabilize the communities through the master planning and then the sowing of the seed investments as well. We're looking at making sure that we are leveraging not just new opportunities, but looking at what we have existing ownership and public opportunities as well. Making sure that we're looking at ways to prevent displacement, making sure that we're looking at ways to provide additional resources for housing. Again, city-led programs that will allow us to take the lead and take the charge and dovetail into not just one program, but a series of programs over the next coming years.
Sophie Bryan, Councilmember Brooks. So in answer to your question about the community benefits agreement, I think John talked earlier during the hearing about the multiple modes that the administration engaged with Chinatown and adjacent communities going back to 2023. So there was those meetings that DPD and PIDC held directly with community members. The mayor had several meetings. We heard from Councilmember Squilla. Really importantly, there's the community impact study, which is directly sourced from engagement, again, through multiple modes with Chinatown stakeholders. And from those conversations, those modes of engagement, clear and similar themes came up. And I think Chief of Staff Tiffany Thurman ran through those in her introduction. So first and foremost, concern about the preservation of the cultural community, the ethnic community that is Chinatown. Concerns about gentrification, displacement both of residents and of businesses, concerns about business closure, concerns about safety and cleanliness. And so while it's the case that we didn't have a direct counterparty at the table negotiating the CBA, all of those themes and all of those insights went into the CBA allocations. And maybe, Councilmember, I think here it's maybe the right time to sort of elevate the Chinatown commitment to be much broader than the CBA. And I think we've talked about in the briefings with council members this broader commitment that the mayor is seeking to make to Chinatown. And really, the Arena project is sort of spurring that closer look and that attention to Chinatown. I think one of the findings that we took so poignantly from the community impact study is that Chinatown's already experienced significant gentrification and change over the past several decades, even prior to this Arena project being proposed. And that's really spurred the administration, and John can run through some of the details, thinking about in each of those areas, cultural preservation, recreation space, business, housing, cleanliness, safety, how the administration can leverage all of its departments and all of its resources to support and preserve the community.
And Councilmember Brooks, if I may, I'd like to also add or ask Renee Garcia, our city solicitor, to talk about the structure of the CBA.
Thank you. Councilmember, it's important to emphasize that the agreement is between the city and the team. And so if there is a breach of the agreement, it is on my office to bring that enforcement action. Too many times we have seen CBAs where the city is not involved, and therefore if there is a breach, then it is incumbent upon these neighborhood associations to lawyer up and try to take on a $1 billion basketball team. So it is squarely within my office to enforce. We also have other safeguards. We have the money flowing into the city. So the Sixers will make a payment to the city that will go in restricted funds, and the payments will go out from the city. Specifically, the financial budget office will be handling that. There will also be, it will also be transparent. So there will be, each year, when the money comes in and the money goes out, the public will be able to see where the money is going. And most importantly, as we have found in other cities, they did not include the term that will make the CBA binding upon owner after owner after owner. No matter how many owners there are, this agreement will be binding.
And if I could just add quickly, and I apologize for turning my back. The meetings I mentioned earlier we actually were not talking about, in those 10 meetings, the dates that I provided. The No Arena Coalition was determined not to concede that there would be an arena, and so we really didn't get into it. But we did the impact study, and we'll provide the dates and the information. There was significant outreach in a multiple number of ways to gather information from folks in Chinatown to find out what is your concern, what is your worry, what can we do to, what is the worst case scenario, what are the things that most worry you if an arena came, and we collected those ideas, and those are the things that went into the CBA. We've also had information from the Chinatown community from past studies. They put out their own material to indicate what it is that they're concerned with generally pre-arena and post-arena, and we took all of that to try to incorporate and encompass the CBA to address those issues.
And I thank you for that. So the meetings that you guys held with the Chinatown Coalition, were they similar to the meetings that you held with council members?
Again, as John said, we had ongoing meetings with them before administration started. That's why it's prudent that John Monlick talk about that, because he was part of the previous administration. So over the course of the 2 years, we've had meetings with them, inclusive of or similar to the meetings that we had with council members. So beyond that.
Okay, so you've had similar meetings with the Chinatown Coalition over the last 2 years?
A little over a year, less than 2 years.
Okay, I'll come back for a second round of questioning.
Thank you very much, Madam Brooks. You finished your line of questioning?
Second round.
Your second
I'm
round?
trying-
All right, the
respect
chair.
your time.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. President, and let me say thank you, Chief Thurman and Solicitor Garcia and Directors Carroll, DuBois, Lawrence, EVP Rhodes. I wanted to start this morning by shouting out all the organizers and activists that are here today. I know that there are many folks in the room, all the union siblings in the room is good news, but particularly Philly's finest, Unite Here Local 274 is in the house. And this conversation never felt complete to me without y'all in the room, so I'm glad to see y'all here this morning. You're nice like red. There's a lot we need to talk about, including the prospects for sustaining long-term work that ensures Philly workers are fully respected. And I know all of us in council are eager to get into the details even more. So let me get into them. I wanted to start my questions by asking the administration to consider its priorities during this critical time for the country and our city. I echo the sentiments and the concerns of my leader. At a federal level, we are staring down another Trump presidency. Here we go again. That the city itself is not prepared for. An administration that threatens our funding streams, our democracy, the safety of many of our most vulnerable neighbors, particularly some of them in the Chinatown community. We don't assume this, we expect it. The man bragged about it, and now it's time to reap. And locally, we're facing several real crises, a citywide housing crisis only made worse by the pending expiration of the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative, looming school closures that the leader mentioned, SEPTA's increasing dire fiscal cliff that we've already talked a bit about, which escalated today with the announcement of the fare hikes. And in the midst of all of that, we're spending our time, if I may say, here today, talking about this. We are prioritizing a pet project of billionaires. They got plenty of money, instead of the material needs of Philadelphians. With that in mind, I want to ask a few rapid-fire questions about the administration's priorities. When can we expect the administration to release its plan to protect our city against the Trump administration, similar to the one that was released in 2016?
What we have released January 1, 2024 is the plan. A safer, cleaner, greener, big city in America with economic opportunity for all. That is the plan. We're going to empower the tool of transparency. We're still focused on housing affordability. The plan, the direction, the vision, we double down on. We don't shrink back from. We don't change course.
Beautiful vision, I appreciate it. There is a major difference in the world today as there is another President-elect Donald Trump. For the record, could you state how many hours we are spending in these hearings focused on an arena that's wildly unpopular? I think percentage was 50-something, 6%. How many hours are we going to be focused on this particular issue?
I have not calculated the hours.
The answer, Chief Thurman, is 41 hours, respectfully. And for the record, how many days do we have before the inauguration of President-elect Trump?
I know I can't ask a point of clarification, but I will say that if your question is how many hours our administration is spending on this arena deal,
No, I'm saying, for the record, how many, we are all in here now, all of us. Could you state how many hours that we're spending in these hearings focused on an arena that's wildly unpopular? The answer is 41.
yes, sounds to me like you have the answer.
Yeah, 41 hours. And for the record, again, how many days do we have, and this is to get us to focus and be clear about the issue, how many days do we have before the inauguration of this man? The answer is 69 days.
Sounds to me like you have the answer.
69 days. So again, there are many things to be concerned about right now. I've listed some of those. I heard the bell ring. I don't know if I have time to come to keep my questions. Thank you. And I really think it is important. It's an important note that in the midst of the world shifting and folks responding to what just took place this past week, that the sixth largest city in the country is not focused on what we're going to do to protect the citizenry. We're focused on how we're going to get an arena through when we already got one. Let me move on. There are many shiny promises here, but just as many details are missing. And we're not talking about the small details on the margins, the questions that remain lay at the heart of this plan. As a result, this entire deal, to me and to others, feels very half-baked. Is it true that council does not currently have access to the lease that details the developer's ability to buy the arena site back for a single dollar after the lease ends?
As Renee answer that question, I just want to say, before I turn it over to our city solicitor, that the way that we frame this is not just about the arena in and of itself, but what it unlocks, which is why we frame this as, in our public announcement and in the meetings that we've had since then, this is beyond the basketball. And that's why, even now, especially now, that is very important. But going more to the technical question around the lease, I'll turn it over to our city solicitor.
We are negotiating a sublease. It is currently 185 pages long. It is done but for the terms that we will be negotiating here. The term sheet that you have, which was provided to the public 30 days before introduction, is the deal. So this is a binding agreement. Everything in the sublease is boiled down to the term sheet. You also have the ground lease between the city and Paid, which has many of the same requirements that are in the sublease. You also have a servicing agreement. Of course, you then have the EOP and other documents. To the extent that there are questions about different topics in the term sheet, I'd be happy to brief you. But again, this is the deal. What the sublease is the material terms surrounded by legal gobbledygook. And I'll tell you, the 60 pages are just defined terms in the sublease. And this is how we have negotiated every single arena and big development deal.
Let me just put this on the record. In Section 5 of the title of Bill 240966, it outlines that Arena Co. can buy the arena at the end of the lease. In Section 16.1 of that same bill, the tenant purchase option outlines that the purchase price is $1, and it refers to another lease which elaborates on that option, and we do not currently have access to that lease. Does the city have final cost estimates on the police manpower and overtime needed for this proposal?
I'm sorry, my name is Sam Rhodes. I'm Executive Vice President with PIDC. And I apologize, to the first part of your question, the repurchase of the property for $1 relates to the fact that the Sixers are purchasing all of this at their own cost and building it at their own cost. So they're donating it to the city. So they likewise then would get it back at the end.
Does the city have the final cost estimates on the police manpower and overtime needed for this proposal?
We do not have the final cost estimates, but we are working diligently with our administration as well as with the Sixers on what is needed.
We don't have access to these plans or estimations finalized. Who will pay for the increased costs faced by PPD to provide additional security? I know some of this has kind of been hinted at, but just I'm asking for my line of questions. Who will pay for the increased costs faced by PPD to provide additional security?
Currently, the arena owner in South Philadelphia pays for police security both inside and outside of the arena. Presumably, that's going to be what is required here as well.
Presumably, that'll be what's required, presumably. Who will pay for the additional cost faced by SEPTA? And again, I know we've had some of this already, but for the record, who will pay for the additional cost faced by SEPTA?
That's still being worked through.
Excuse me, for everyone, could everyone speaking to the microphone so everyone can hear you, because
And I
you're all speaking low.
I believe we discussed costs and operational costs, and the Sixers is responsible for the operational cost for SEPTA for this project. I don't know if you want to come up, calling on Mike Carroll to talk about SEPTA.
I have questions for round two, Mr. President. Thank you so much.
So just to respond, the costs for event day with respect to police and staffing are addressed in the traffic event management plan, and the draft plan that was provided indicated that the arena would pay for those costs, that they would staff those positions, which implies they will pay for those costs. The question about SEPTA operations and services has come up a number of times today, and so the city's position is pretty clear. We have done our part to support SEPTA. We don't want to get in a position where we're sort of triangulated as a city into fronting more costs, and we will not do that. So we will rely on the discussions. We will support the discussions between the Sixers, SEPTA, and other parties that may be interested in this to identify the resources to cover those additional transit expenses.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. My colleague shouted out Unite Here, so I guess I should shout out the building trades, all my brothers and sisters over here supporting. Yeah, that's good. That deserves a round of applause. Just in general, we keep hearing how this deal is different from other deals that we as a city have been through before. We've had experience in this kind of stuff. We did build a few stadiums. We have built a few stadiums in the past. I would just like to know, I know you guys did your research, so how does this deal compare to other deals that have gone on in similar cities, size-wise and downtown arena? I'm sure you looked at all that. Could you tell us how our deal differs from other deals?
So the first we'll do is talk about the historical context of this and why we came out publicly and said that this is the best deal. So I'll turn it over to Rob DeBoe.
Thanks for the question, Council Member. So, and there are a couple of ways that this is different from earlier deals. All the earlier deals that we had some city contribution and substantial city contributions. This has no local funding, so that's a major difference. On top of that, the pilot for this agreement is larger than the pilot agreements we've had for earlier agreements. In fact, if you combine the pilot payments for Wells Fargo, the Link, and Citizens Bank Park, add them all together, they equal the same amount as the pilot for the new arena. The CBA is different in that rather than being paid evenly over the years, the money is front-loaded, so more is spent in the first 10 years than in any of the other agreements. And we've talked about how the EOP is different from earlier EOPs. So substantially different in a number of ways from earlier deals.
And the chair recognizes Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson.
I apologize, my colleague. I just wanted to state, Mr. DeBoe, I have the comparison sheet out from the administration on page 18. You did detail the information regarding the CBA, the pilots, and the various comparisons as it relates to impact from Wells Fargo, Citizens Bank, Lincoln Financial, and 76th Place, but you did not mention charitable donations.
I didn't mention what? Right. So actually, if you add the charitable donations and the arena, the $1 million a year, I forgot what it was called, those payments combined are still less than the CBA. And the CBA also has the benefit of being front-loaded.
Just pardon me for the record, because I just want to make sure I have the.
Can you speak into the microphone for me,
Pardon me,
please?
just for the record, I want to make sure I have the numbers right. Are you saying that everything is front-loaded in the $50 million that you have listed here, and that the special service, let me go back, the $50 million includes everything in the community benefits agreement as well as the charitable donations, because previously there was a $30 million payment that was paid out over 30 years to the Children's Fund, and I don't see that here.
That's right. The $50 million includes both, and the $30 million was paid out evenly over time, as opposed to the CBA, which is front-loaded.
So $1 million per year per team for Citizens and for Lincoln, but I don't see that listed here, is what I'm saying. It's not listed here.
In what the table I'm looking at says that the charitable donations are included in the $50 million above.
But does that include the $30 million paid to the Children's Fund?
Yes. Yes.
So it does include that in the 76th place?
76th place doesn't, so 76th place is just the $50 million. The earlier contributions had the $30 million to the Children's Fund plus the $11 million to Special Services District. But if you add those two up, it's still less than the $50 million.
I'll come back, Mr. President, but I'll come back to be respectful of my colleague.
Thank you. You're welcome, Majority Leader. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity, and then we'll break.
Yeah, I was still, some more clarity on how things are actually different in this deal. For instance, how does the community benefit package compare to other stadiums that were built in other cities that are close to what we are, City of the First Class, a downtown arena?
So we had CSL, the outside firm, look at how our deal compared to other deals. It's consistent with the trend of moving towards less local funding, but there are still deals that have substantial local funding. Like Oklahoma City, for example, just had a deal where they put in a lot of their own money. The pilot payment is hard to compare because for some of the other places, they are doing things like issuing debt, and the pilot payment is helping them pay off their debt. So we think it's a strong pilot compared to other places, but hard to completely compare apples to apples since other pilots are covering different things.
Okay, I heard my buzzer ring, so I'll wait till the next round. But also just want to make sure that, I voiced the fact that I am also concerned, like my colleague Isaiah Thomas, with the 1.6. I don't believe that's enough. I've stated that in meetings. I'm glad that we're looking at grants for it, but I believe we need to look at that number. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will recess until 1:45. See everybody back.